Hey, Butch from Discussion, how's it going? This is Ashton, and I am Thursday's Butch. This topic couldn't have come at a better time. It's actually the reason I'm posting a day late. I had some relationship, or lack thereof, drama the last 48 hours. It's been pretty, melodramatic and all-consuming. So I apologize in advance if I seem bitter or angry or kind of, any other kind of emotional. I'm going to try to keep on track here, but I feel like I can't really talk about this topic without kind of going into a little bit of what's been going on in my life for the last month. As I've said before, like the last big relationship I had, that was 2 years ago, I don't really feel comfortable calling it emotionally abusive per se, but it was definitely emotionally manipulative in a big, big way. I was pretty much with someone who liked to argue, and I do not like to argue. It was very passive-aggressive, and, nothing was ever her fault. Ever. Like, even when she cheated on me, or, and all that business, nothing was ever her fault. It always, and anytime I brought up things that upset me, she would invalidate my feelings and somehow twist it around so that it was my fault for feeling that way, or, just generally invalidate my feelings. And unfortunately, I had a relatively similar thing happen with the girl I was dating recently, and I don't want to get too much into, current personal drama on YouTube, but it pretty much became increasingly apparent that she was a really very, very passive-aggressive person, and when I attempted to communicate that really upset me, she pretty much said, pardon the French, fuck you about 5 times, and wound up hanging up on me and telling me that she didn't want to be my friend and all this business, and there's been more drama than that. But it was interesting to me how her style of communicating reminded me a whole hell of a lot of my ex from 2 years ago style of communicating, of pretty much anytime I brought up concern, she would invalidate my feelings and act like I was just being crazy. And, you just can't be with people who are like that. I think there are a lot of... The thing about emotional abuse, physical abuse is obvious. You can see the bruises. But emotional abuse, I think, often happens a lot more gradually, a lot more subtly, at least in my experience with emotionally manipulative people and from seeing friends who've gone through emotionally abusive relationships. Things start out great, you really like this person, they're really cool, you finally found someone you really click with, and, you get in a relationship, and, just every once in a while, the first fight doesn't go so well, and then, all the other fights really don't go so well, and then they start saying really hurtful, demeaning things to you. And I think that's hard for all of us, just because I think most people want to believe that the person they're in like or in love with wouldn't do things like that to them. I think a lot of us want to believe that people are inherently good and don't want to hurt us or others, and unfortunately that's just not always the case, and it's hard to deal with that, and it's hard to recognize it, and it's difficult to separate yourself from someone you have so many feelings for, because of course there's the there's the demeaning talk, and then there's the, oh, I take it back, or, oh, but I love you so much, or, any number of excuses, or, especially, well, if you wouldn't do this, I wouldn't treat you like that, and making the victim feel like it's their fault, which I know I felt a lot like back in my relationship 2 years ago. So I'm gonna post some links. I'm gonna look them up right after I get done with this, and post some links with websites that detail signs of emotional abuse, and I would really encourage everyone to just make themselves aware with that. It seems like a lot of people on this channel have already been through emotional abuse and have a pretty good idea of what the signs of that are, or have been perpetrators of emotional abuse and know what the signs of that are. And a quick segue here, I do want to say thank you to those who have acknowledged that they have been abusive in some way in the past. I know that takes a lot of courage, and the acknowledgement that it happened and that you are working on changing it or have changed it is a big deal, and that's a good thing. And maybe you can't make up for the people you've hurt, but you can try, and really put effort into not hurting people in the future. And I think that's a good first step, and it's a big deal, and it takes a lot to completely change the way that you interact with people, that you argue with people, that you think about people and their intentions. So kudos to those of you who've had the bravery to share your experience with the other side. And now I don't remember what I segued from. But yeah, just look at the list, familiarize yourself with it, give it to the women in your life, whether they're in emotionally abusive relationships or not. I think a huge part of it is just awareness. I think a lot of women just don't understand what the signs are. Maybe men too, it's not always men who are the emotional abusers. It can obviously be women within lesbian relationships or in straight relationships too. I've known a lot of guy friends who are really, really good, nice, kind-hearted people who've really been, put through the ringer by really toxic women. So it goes all ways, no one is, no one is automatically innocent just because of their gender. So I guess, at least in my experience, I know, for the longest time, when I was with this person 2 years ago, I would say things like, or keep thinking to myself, oh, I just need to get better at arguing so that I can really, put up a fight next time we have an argument instead of feeling like crap, and I just need to get better at, making snap outbursts that could be, that would equal the way she was lashing out at me. And then I was like, wait, what in the hell am I saying? I don't need to be better at arguing. What I need is to be with someone who doesn't enjoy arguing, and who can communicate with me in a healthy way. And I think that's a really important distinction, and that's hard to look for and hard to recognize because you do have to get to know a person, and it's hard to let go of something that you, if you really like a person, then you see those signs. It's hard to take a step back and be like, oh, this is not going to be good for me, and to immediately get them out of your life, which is pretty much what I just did, I guess. Again, I don't want to go into too personal information, but this girl was pretty much the first girl I've seriously liked in about 2 years, so it's kind of a big deal for me. But when it comes to the bottom line, actions speak louder than words, and you can't put up with someone who treats you like shit. You just can't, because it's not going to change. You have to find the strength within you to get yourself out of that situation. And I know I've seen a lot of posts this week also from survivors of this, and that's, I really commend you for having the strength to talk about your experiences and for having gotten out of the situation in the first place. It's no easy task. So I'm probably going over right now, so I'm gonna wrap this up, and I'll see you guys in a week. Peace, guys.